Hello again, guys. It's Sam from Premier Racing. Like I promised you guys in my introduction video, I'm gonna do some work on my wife's Miata. She hasn't actually driven it yet, so because I just finished it. I finished it back in June, right before I head back overseas to go do some work. Like I said, I'm a defense contractor. So I finished the car in June, and basically it's been parked in the garage ever since, because I didn't have a chance to get registered or anything like that yet. So this is going to be basically some of the work I'm going to do. I'm going to try to break up each job into its own video, so that way I don't make the videos too long, and you can kind of keep along certain parts you want. That way it's easier for you guys. So let me give you a quick walk around the car so you can see basically what the car looks like now. A little bit backstory: it's a 1995 Mazda Miata, my wife's dream car. I found it in October, or I found it around December, so I got it for her for Christmas. The car did not look like this. It was green, had dings and dents, but it had 115,000 miles. It ran smooth, slight exhaust leak, but ran smooth. A couple minor maintenance issues, nothing big, and I got the car for $2,500. She wanted an automatic, so I found an automatic with power windows, which is a lot harder than most people think. Got it for $2,500 for her, so it was in good enough shape to where I could start before fixing it all up. So got a few things we're going to do to it. Like I said, I'm going to make individual videos for each of the repairs that we're going to do, so you can follow along. So let's give you a quick tour of the car so you can see what it looks like. Alright, so that's it. So as you can see, it's purple now. Let me insert a video here, a picture here, so you can see what the car looked like before. Boom, there it was. That's when I brought it home. So this is the car now. All right. Let me pull you off the stand here. So the color is plum purple, plum crazy purple, I should say. This is the same plum crazy purple that came on the 1970 Dodge Challenger. There you go. So excuse all the boxes here. Like I said in my introduction video, I'm still working out of my actual garage. My shop building, which I'll give you a quick peek. My shop building is back there in the back of the property, as you can see. That's my container with all my equipment in it. But it's a 40 by 60 building, so 2,400 square feet. Foundation's done, doing all the wood framing. I'll do other videos about that. For today is going to be this, and this is the valve cover gasket. Valve cover is leaking. We're also going to be doing the oil change. So I like Valvoline. That's always been my favorite type of oil for like my street use cars. So I'm going to do some high mileage Valvoline oil with the high mileage oil stabilizer from Lucas, who makes great products. I got a Purelator oil filter. These are the tools that we're going to be using. These are the tools that you don't need to use these. I mean, you can make it work with other stuff, but this is what I'm going to be using. That's my digital torque wrench for me to torque the valve cover bolts down, and this 3/8 drives ratchet with 10mm socket and 3-inch extension, 12mm wrench, 12mm 1/4-inch drive socket with wrench. Using those pliers and your standard pliers there. And I got my magnetic pen for me to put my bolts into when I'm done. First thing we're going to do is our standard pliers. This clamp on the PCV valve. We're going to remove that. I'm just going to press down and slide it backwards. Then we're going to remove the hose from the valve itself. Now there's a chance that the valve could come out with it. That's okay. Don't freak out. It's all right if the valve comes out with it. You can just put it right back in there. Turn that out of the way. Next one I'm going to do is this breather hose right here that runs back to the intake. Same thing. Going to squeeze down the clamp, pull it back. Going to wiggle that right off. All right. I'm actually going to take it off these hangers here that are on the valve cover, since we're going to remove the valve cover. All right. we are done with the standard pliers right now. Place that back. Next thing we want to do is remove your spark plug wires from the valve cover. Now, one thing to notice is that I know not everybody knows about cars, so we're just gonna go basic, okay? Spark plug wires are usually all different lengths in this case because one has to go further than the other, right? So the one that goes here is gonna be longer than the one that goes back here because it has further to go. So if you forget which order these go in, that's a great way to remember it. You pull them all, you find the longest one, and you work your way back. I'd say if it's a factory replacement wires, I'd say 9 out of 10 times that's gonna help you out there, okay? What I do is, with plug wires, I like to annotate by writing on the end of the caps right there. So let me see if you can, probably can't see those too well. All right. There we go. So when I say caps, I mean the opposite end of the plug wire that goes into the coil pack. So I annotated. So on mine, it's got numbers written on it. That's just how I like to operate. Everybody has their own method. You can write it here, whatever you want to do, man. As long as you guys know where they go back, okay? So right here it says number 1. I know that goes to my first one, my first cylinder. Boom. And I'm just gonna tuck it right back here. Number 2, same thing. You just give them a little tug. Don't snatch, just slowly apply pressure in reverse to pull them out. Here's the other one. There we go. And then number 4 is the final plug wire. Oh, this one's a little snug. And there we go. What you want to avoid doing is pulling on the wire itself. You pull on the wire itself, it's gonna rip out of the boot. Next thing you know, you gotta go buy yourself a set of plug wires. I'm gonna put those there. All right. Now, once we got that done, we have a series of bolts that we got to worry about to remove. The main bolts are going to be these 10mm bolts, all right, that go all the way around the valve cover and down the middle of the valve cover. So you have 2, 4, 6, 8, 1, 2, 3, that's 11, all right, plus, I think that was it, yeah. So you have these 11 10mm bolts right here. In addition to those 11 10mm bolts, you also have a 12mm bolt back here and another one right here that holds the coil pack to the valve cover itself. So I like to do the hardest thing first so I don't have to deal with it later. So what I'm going to do is remove these 12mm bolts that are right here and right here, okay? Like I said, it's right here and right here. So let me bring you in so you can get a better view of those. Okay. That's the coil pack right there. So the first bolt is right there, and then on the opposite side is the same thing. So the bolt goes in this way into the valve cover. Okay. Guys right there while I do that. So for this side, because of the connector for the coil pack right here, it makes it a bit hard to get a socket on it. Now, if you don't mind messing with this connector and removing it, you can get a socket on there easily. Me, I don't want to mess with the connector, so I'm just going to use my 12mm ratchet wrench. I'm going to put that on there. Oh, this is a little thicker than the standard wrench, so it's not sitting there right, so I'm just going to flip it over with the open end. I'm going to find my size, there we go, and then break it loose, and there it is. All right. Once you break it loose, you can pretty much turn it with your fingers, and you can get that loose. Now, before I remove it all the way, I want to go ahead and break the other side loose, just to make sure it keeps the coil pack level, so I don't have any tension on anything anywhere. Now, this side has this clip in the way here, but this clip, you can remove it by just either using needle nose pliers on the bottom of it to squeeze it free. I thought I was going to have to do that, but this one's apparently already broken, so. But you can run needle nose pliers under it to squeeze the sides of the clamp so it pops off. 1/4 inch drive with 12mm socket on there. I went with a 1/4 inch drive because it's smaller I can still get the torque I need to break it loose if I have to. And because of the size, I can fit it in here better. And there we go. So doing this, you might have a little bit of annoyance with that cable for the coil pack right here that we popped out of the hole there, and the throttle cable running here. So if I just move that out of the way, like so, now I have more freedom to break it loose. All right, once that happens, let's see. Yep, I'm able to spin it free with my fingers. So I will go ahead and remove this bolt completely. And there it is. And this bracket is what our connector was supposed to mount on, remember? So everybody does this next part differently. So I removed everything. You can either, I'm told what people don't make. People will usually use the car as a place to rest their bolts and things. I don't like doing that because I always find a way to drop something or lose something, especially if it's a 10mm socket. If you know, you know. So instead, I've got my little magnetic. I've got my magnetic bolt plate right there. And every time I remove some stuff, I go ahead and drop it in there because I know exactly where that's going to be at all times. I'm going to pull this bolt out that we loosened up earlier but didn't remove it completely. And it's free. So that there is the bolt. I can get you guys a focus on it so you can, boom, there you go. All right, already ripped the glove, look at that. Anyways, it's a 12mm, okay? And that's it right there. So you have two of those that hold the coil pack on. In the pan it goes. Now, once we remove those two, as you can see, the coil pack is now free from the valve cover, okay? Now we're gonna address our bolts there, 10mm bolts. Now, as I mentioned before, you can use your standard 3/8 drive ratchet, okay? With the, I got a short 3-inch extension here with a 10mm deep socket. That will do the job if you have it. You don't have to have power tools. I just happen to have all the tools that, you know, that make the job a little faster. So, and my 3/8 drive impact DeWalt gun. Put it on there, and then we're just gonna go. Now, tightening and removing, technically, per the factory, has a sequence so that way you prevent warping stuff when you remove it. Okay. I don't know off the top of my head what the proper sequence is for this specifically, so I'm just gonna do it in the sequence that I know is the most common general way of removing and bolting down items in multiple bolts, okay? Alright, so I'm just gonna make sure if I put my tool away, make sure I got it loose. Yep. And it looks like we are pretty much free here. Gravy. Alright, so now put my tool away. And I'm gonna pull all the bolts out. So I don't want anything falling anywhere near inside of here. It'll be a pain in the butt to get out. Alright, and there go my 10mm bolts. That's what they look like. Okay, so you see, that's how long they are. Okay. Boom, that's them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I know I missed one right there, number 11. That right there is why I count them after I pull them out and count them before I take them out. Now we can go ahead and remove our valve cover. There it is. That's simple. Okay. So the reason, as you can see, we've had some oil leaks and grime and buildup and stuff. So normally when I'm doing this for a customer's vehicle, I'll take the valve cover and I'll go through and clean it in my parts cleaner. And if the customer wants it painted or whatever the case is, I'll either, that makes a difference. So if they want it to just be cleaned, I'll just put it in my parts cleaner, run it through, clean it up real nice, and make it look good again. And if they want it painted, I'll then take it, I'll throw it into my sandblaster, I'll sandblast it, get every creak and corner of it cleaned, and then I'll go ahead and primer and paint it for them. So on the wife's car, I'm just gonna clean it with degreaser, make it look as good as possible, and then we're gonna go right back, put it on. But the reason why we pulled it is to replace this piece. This is the valve cover gasket you see here. It's still stuck in here. So once you get it off the car, you can basically just pull it out, as you can see. See? It just comes out. Right? So we're gonna come over to the bench so you can see. So this is our valve cover we just pulled off the car. Okay? And right here is the valve cover gasket I showed you a little bit ago. And the valve cover gasket, basically, there's grooves in here along the sides and the center where the plugs go into, right? And the valve cover basically just presses into this groove. Okay, so I'll bring it a little closer here so you can see it. So I'm gonna peel this side off, and then you can see, you see that groove there? Right there, you can see the groove. It just sits into that groove there. All right, right there. So that's what it looks like. So we are going to remove our old valve cover gasket. Obviously it doesn't matter if you rip it or anything, just I got OCD, so I just like to take it out in one piece if possible. All right. Now this gasket might look new to people, right? It doesn't look old, right? And it probably isn't that old, but it's been sitting on the car for a while, and the car was actually parked for a couple years, really. So just, gets dried and starts to crack kind of. And then once the car finally gets hot again and oil pressure's built up in there and oil's flying everywhere, it just starts to seep out. So there it is right there. So that's the old one. And you can tell when you feel it that it's been dried out for a while, Now we've got our new one, our new Felpro. I picked this up at Advanced Auto Parts, and it cost me, I think it was 27 bucks is what it was at Advanced Auto Parts. The other worst thing about working with oil, we got these gloves on, makes things slippery. So usually I'm constantly changing out my gloves doing a job because I hate that, so. Okay. And there is our new valve cover gasket. That's the new gasket there. One piece, just like the old one, nothing different. And all you want to do is look at it to find which way it goes on the valve cover, which is a lot easier than it might look. So basically I can tell right here, right? This is where my cam sensor is go. Oh, sorry. I can tell by looking right here that this is where my cam sensor is going to go. And I know my cam sensor is back here. So I'm going to flip it this way. And then we're going to just follow along the groove, press everything in. As you can see, the bolt holes, where they go, the gasket has these little rings, right, where the bolts go right through right there. So we're just going to put those into around every spot, and you just go along and you just pressing the gasket in. But it's all in there. Now, once I initially put it in, I like to just go ahead and run my hands across to make sure everything is actually pressed into the grooves completely. I just kind of run it around it, you know, make sure it's all the way down in there. And everything's in, looks good. Nice. Okay. So, next thing I like to do before I put this back on the car is just take a quick look, do a quick inspection of the valve cover. Make sure I don't see any, you know, anything, metal particulates, because that'll give you a sign something's going wrong. You know, you just make sure nothing alarming pops your eyes, catches your eyes out, whatever. But everything looks good with this. Looks nice. Now going to reinstall the valve cover. And just like that, our valve cover is back in. And I do a little pressing along it just to make sure it's actually sitting properly. There's no unevenness, because then that means your gasket might have came out and folded under it or whatever the case is. So we're back in there. And before anybody says anything crazy, all right, I'm going to clean it. I'm going to degrease the entire under hood. So I might as well put it back and just do everything one time. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go in reverse steps that we went on before. And I'm going to go ahead and put in our 10mm bolts back in there. My 10mm head bolts. Okay. Looking online, there's a few different recommendations for torquing these down. Some say you torque them down in 2 stages, some say you torque them down in 3 stages, and you know, it goes on. I'm not doing that. I'm doing it how I always do it, okay? I've been working on these Miatas for, well, since I was for 15, yeah, since I was 15, so we're talking about 18 years now, okay? So I'm gonna do this how I do it and how I have done it since I started working on these 18 years ago, and since I've been working on these for 18 years now. Now, if this is your very first time ever doing this job, I highly recommend you go look at the Mazda manual for it, and you see what specs are recommended in the Mazda manual for torque specs and for sequence, okay? Again, I'm not doing that. Deal with it, people. So I'm gonna put all my bolts in there and then grab a couple threads. Again, do not do what I'm about to do if you're new at this. I like to use my impact just to get them snug down, not to tighten them, just to get rid of all my threads that are still sticking out. That way when I get it that close, I can then go to my ratchet or my wrench, whichever one you prefer, but ratchet is much easier on this, and then torque it down that way. So this is, again, just to snug down my bolts so I don't have a bunch of threads to go through manually with my ratchet. Now, what I do know is that Mazda says the torque specs for these is between 43 and 70 inch-pounds. Keyword there, inch-pounds, not foot-pounds, folks, or you're gonna break bolts, okay? So I've got my digital torque wrench here. I'm gonna power that on. So between 43 to 70 inch-pounds. I am gonna go ahead and do 55. I'm gonna do 60 inch-pounds. Now, just to make myself feel better, what I'm doing next is putting my socket onto my ratchet, just because I know my strength and when it's tight. I know the feel, okay? So what I have already at 60 inch-pounds should be great, should be no problem. But just for my peace of mind, because I know I trust my hand and how I've done this so many times, I'm gonna go back through and just feel it. A little extra that I'm giving it, that little extra could be the difference between 60 and 70 inch-pounds. So if I just did 70, I might have been at what I just, tweaked it to. So we are done with our 3/8 drive ratchet and our 10mm deep well socket and 3-inch extension. What we're gonna do now is insert our 12mm bolts that held the coil pack to the valve cover. Again, here are my 2 bolts that have the 12mm head and the bracket that was held on that side, which the coil pack harness mounted to. So I'm just gonna insert the bolts back into it. Right here, 12mm 1/4 inch drive ratchet, 12mm wrench. Now this side. It doesn't take much to tighten these down. Right here, I know we're good. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and put my plug wires back in. And I know where they go because I have them numbered on top, like I said before. This is number 4. My number 3, number 2, and number 1. Once I degrease and clean everything, I'll then go ahead and put these back into their mounting brackets so they're nice and flat, okay? But for now, I just want to make sure everything's seated. I did feel them clip as I pressed them down, so we're good. Make sure nothing back here came undone. Now, our hoses. Hose for the PCV valve. There we go. Going to grab my wrench. I'm sorry, my standard pliers. Put the clamp back on there. There we go. My breather hose that was right here. Clip that back into its brackets. Slide it back on. And it's cracked, I'm gonna have to replace this. See, a lot of this stuff is dry from it sitting so long. And there we go. You've just completed changing your valve cover gasket on your Mazda Miata.